Good morning. I'm Jim Harvin, your lay leader for today, and thank you for joining us at our Sunday service this morning, and we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and your soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you to our Zoom cyberspace. We know you come from different places and different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. Here at UUFLB, we hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, inspiration, and love. We're so glad you joined us this morning and hope you will stay for a few minutes afterwards for fellowship and conversation. We will continue with the monthly Touchstones themes for the month of March, which is balance. Life depends on balance. It is the principle of yin and yang. Sometimes balance is easy, like being on a seesaw, and at other times, when things are dangerously out of balance, it is a high-wire act, especially when dis-ease is rampant. Societal problems, which are sustained over generations, have created the imbalance of economic, political, gender, and racial power that manifest locally, nationally, and globally through financial inequity, racism, educational inequity, and much, much more. Our annual theme of Repairing the World works to address these many imbalances. Today's sermon is from Reverend Libby Smith, who is delighted to come back to UUFLB, where she had the honor of serving as minister from 2007 to 2013, and we had the honor of having her. Ordained in 1992, she also served congregations in Rockport, Massachusetts, and Warrington, PA, and spent 5 years as chaplain at the UU Retirement House down in Philadelphia. Now retired from congregational service, she enjoys a chance to do pulpit supply and rites of passage on request. Her sermon today is 30 years later. This week marks the 30th anniversary of Libby's ordination, and that journey has taught her that despite our longing to put things into neat little categories, much of life turns out to hang in the balance, neither one thing nor the other, but something in between. Perhaps the hardest lesson of being human is learning to be at home in that complicated space between our ideals and the reality of our lives. Now, let us enter into worship together. Our prelude is from our esteemed musician Avi Wisnia, and we hope you enjoy.
Good morning. We start with a song that the famous songwriter Pete Seeger took from a biblical verse in the book of Ecclesiastes and turned it into a modern-day folk song about the passage of time. Feel free to join in and sing with me this morning as we start with the song, Turn, Turn, Turn. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to laugh, a time to weep, a time to kill, and a time to heal. a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to love, a time to hate, a time of peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a reason, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose, and a time for every purpose, and a time for every purpose under heaven.
And now I invite you to recite the words with me, the lighting of the chalice. We light this chalice to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to affirm the historic pledge of our religion to seek that justice which transcends mere legality and moves towards the resolution of true equality, and to share that love which is ultimately beyond even our cherished reason, that love which unites us. Our opening words are from our touchstone resources, which we utilize throughout the year. We pause in the stillness to rest for a moment, to quiet ourselves so that we can feel what stirs within us. Each breath draws us closer to the pulse of life, and with each exhalation, we make room for something new. May we find in this gathering the comfort of those who care. May we encounter patience along our growing edges and compassion in our most tender spots. Here may we find the inspiration and encouragement we need to face our challenges and nurture ourselves. And in the presence of suffering across the globe, may we redouble our efforts to practice kindness where we are, with the hope that the light of our actions travel like the light of faraway stars. When life presses in and shifts us off balance, when pain assails us, when frustration mounts, may the rhythm of our breath steady us and bring us back to a place of gratitude. And now, Beck Stow will provide the message for all ages.
Good morning. I'm Beck Stow, and our message for all ages today is What Do You Do with a Problem? Written by Kobe Yamada and illustrated by May Bessam. I don't know how it happened, but one day I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I really didn't like having a problem, but it was there. Why is it here? What does it want? What do you do with a problem? I thought. I wanted to make it go away. I shooed it. I scowled at it. I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? What if my problem sneaks up and gets me? What if it takes away all of my things? I worried a lot. I worried about what would happen. I worried about what could happen. I worried about this and worried about that. And the more I worried, the bigger my problem became. I wished it would just disappear. I tried everything I could to hide from it. I even found ways to disguise myself, but it still found me. And the more I avoided my problem, the more I saw it everywhere. I thought about it all the time. It didn't feel good at all. I couldn't take it anymore. This has to stop, I declared. Maybe I was making my problem bigger and scarier than it actually was. After all, my problem hadn't really swallowed me up or attacked me. I realized that I had to face it. So, even though I didn't want to, even though I was really afraid, I got ready and I tackled my problem. When I got face to face with it, I discovered something. My problem wasn't what I thought it was. I discovered it had something beautiful inside. My problem held an opportunity. It was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow, to be brave, to do something. It showed me that it was important to look closely because some opportunities only come once. So now I see problems differently. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know their secret. Every problem has an opportunity for something good. You just have to look for it.
Yes, those are wise words that we should all take in. And now Avi's going to provide an interlude for us. This is Tom Chapin with This Pretty Planet.
This pretty planet spinning through space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle blue giants spin us around. Oh, through the night, safe till the morning light. This pretty planet spinning through space, your garden, your shelter, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle blue giants spin us around. All through the night, safe
Thank you, Avi. For our offertory,
Reading.
I'm sorry. Our guest speaker, Libby Smith, will now provide us with the reading.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Avi, for that beautiful piece to sort of center and calm us all this morning. Before I offer the reading, I need to offer an apology and an explanation, because the sermon that you're going to hear this morning is not the sermon that you heard a description of earlier in the service and that I advertised. You see, like the child in our story, I had a problem. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it. I wanted to make it go away. I shooed it, I scowled at it, I tried ignoring it, but nothing worked. I started to worry about my problem. What if it swallows me up? The problem was the sermon, which wasn't working. And the more I worried about the fact that it wasn't working, the harder it got to figure out what on earth I was trying to say. And finally, I had to face my problem. The trouble is that I always pull sermons together at the last minute. I just take for granted that that's how it will happen. So it wasn't until 2:30 this morning that I realized there was no way it was going to turn into something preachable by 10:30. There was no way it was going to be a sermon worth listening to. So the opportunity I found when I faced my problem was the opportunity to admit defeat and bring you a different sermon. One that I actually wrote a year ago, but have adapted for this morning. I checked my records very carefully. I couldn't call Sherry at 2:30 in the morning to confirm this, but I'm quite certain you have not heard it, that I did not bring it to you. And since the next time I preach, it's actually on a related theme. And since the next time I preach, the theme for the month will be courage, I am hoping to have the courage to go back to my problematic sermon and face it again and find the opportunity of wrestling it into a sermon that will actually be worth hearing. So having said that, I will offer the reading. And this reading is a meditation from the Reverend Teresa Soto. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and our ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home.
Thank you, Libby. And I know you'll take this problem as an opportunity. Now for our offertory. The split plate collection for March will go to our fully vetted organization, Save the Children. The war in Ukraine has been devastating. Thousands of Ukraine's children are now suffering from physical harm, severe emotional distress, and mass displacement. Save the Children is concerned for children caught in the middle of armed conflict, forced from their homes in freezing temperatures and exposed to injury, hunger, and cold. Donations to Save the Children's Ukraine Crisis Relief Fund can help provide children and families with immediate aid, such as food, water, hygiene kits, psychosocial support, and cash assistance. Any donations will go toward protecting these children in crisis. Please be a part of this effort by contributing as generously as possible by using the link on our website or shown in our e-newsletter. And thank you for your generosity. And now we will have Libby back again to provide her new sermon, which we'll have the pleasure of hearing.
Thank you, Jim. The title of this is actually Ultimate Optimism. Because about a year ago, someone challenged me to write a sermon on optimism for our times. And at the time, if you think back to what was going on a year ago, that theme felt painfully relevant. We were 1 year into the pandemic. We were continuing to wrestle with restrictions and fears and uncertainties. When the pandemic shutdown had first begun 2 years ago now, many of us were optimistic that it would be a short-term situation and that life would soon return to something like normal. And then as time went on, many of us lost that initial optimism as the seriousness of the situation began to sink in. 2 years in now, we're still painfully aware of the losses and the uncertainty. At the same time, in an attempt to balance our experiences, many of us have paid more attention during the past 2 years to the things that keep us going during hard times. We've taken more seriously aspects of our self-care. We've reached out to people we may have been disconnected from. We've tried to strengthen family ties, the things that give us hope when we might otherwise fall into despair. Today, as war continues to rage in Ukraine, and I read the news stories about the courage and the commitment of the people there, I wonder how they're maintaining any sense of hope and where they find the strength and the courage to keep going. And I'm reminded that we are always living with a balance of sorrow and joy, hardship and possibility, grief and hope. As Avi sang to us so beautifully, and I wish he could have heard my harmonies, to everything there is a season, a time to be born, a time to die, a time for war, a time for peace. And so often these things come not one at a time, but intermingled. So this morning I want to talk about optimism and I want to talk about hope and why I think they're two different things. And I want to start with some insights from our religious heritage because I can never resist giving a little UU history lesson in my sermons. Our Unitarian Universalist faith grows out of two distinct strands of theology, both of which are profoundly optimistic at their core. But the optimism of each faith tradition sprang from very different sources. The Universalists were optimistic because of their view of God. They believed that a just and loving God could not possibly damn anyone to eternal suffering, that all souls would find harmony with God. So they could be optimistic about their ultimate spiritual destiny, not because of their own virtue and worthiness, but because of God's love and compassion. The Unitarians, on the other hand, grounded their optimism in their understanding of human nature. They also believed in a divine force working for the good, but they emphasized the innate value of human beings and our ability to work with God to improve ourselves and improve the world. My title this morning, Ultimate Optimism, comes from an essay by James Luther Adams. Adams was an influential 20th century liberal theologian who was himself a Unitarian Universalist. And the essay that I am working from was in his book, On Being Human Religiously. It was published in 1976, and I devoured it for an undergraduate religion course a couple of years later. Adams identifies 5 key points of liberalism. And for our purposes this morning, I'm jumping straight to the 5th, because this is not a symposium on Adams. But in his 5th point, he says, finally, liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. The resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. And then he adds, this view does not necessarily involve immediate optimism. An attitude of ultimate optimism. He's saying an attitude of ultimate optimism is justified. Now, in modern informal usage, we've come to hear the word ultimate as meaning the most, the best, super optimism. But Adams is using it in its literal sense. The ultimate thing is the thing you get to at the end. It's the last thing. We're not there yet. We might not be there for a long time. That's why he goes on to say the view doesn't necessarily involve immediate optimism. Ultimately, we can be optimistic. It's an important distinction because usually the word optimism implies a short-term understanding that everything's going to be okay. But when Adams talks about ultimate optimism, he's taking a much longer view. He's talking about what I would call hope, or even faith, the possibility of things getting better, not the certainty. He goes on to remind us that we can't ignore or neglect the realistic and even tragic dimensions of human behavior and experience. Those things are real. But he still believed that we could live with what he called a dynamic hope, because he believed that there were resources, both divine and human, that were available to us that would allow us to make meaningful changes in our world. Now, many of us these days, especially in the Unitarian Universalist movement, are more comfortable talking in terms of human resources than we are divine resources. We put our faith primarily in human agency, our will to improve ourselves and our lives and our world. But I'm going to circle back to those divine resources in a few moments, because when we feel powerless or overwhelmed, as we sometimes do, relying on our own human potential and agency doesn't always feel like enough. And it's hard to carry all that weight on our very human shoulders. Now, there's a lot of research that indicates that optimism is good for you. Optimistic people have better mental health, higher levels of achievement, better sleep patterns, better physical health, and increased longevity. I believe these studies. I believe that genuine optimism is good. But a forced, always look on the bright side version of optimism, what one article I read called toxic positivity, can be just that. It can be toxic. It can encourage us to minimize or ignore difficult subjects or feelings in order to maintain that feeling of optimism. And it can leave us feeling as though we've failed if we can't stay optimistic and find ourselves wrestling with those inevitable inner demons. And yet those times of struggle can be some of our most important times of growth. When we face those problems, sometimes we find the opportunities. Optimism without honesty about the pain of our lives and of the world is meaningless. As Cornel West said in an interview I heard, wrestling with despair is a positive thing. You're only as strong in your hope as you are in your wrestling with despair. And yet we need to find a way then to move beyond the despair in our wrestling. Bell Hooks, the Black feminist scholar and activist, wrote that the heart of justice is truth-telling, seeing ourselves and the world the way it is, rather than the way we want it to be. More than ever before, we as a society need to renew a commitment to truth-telling. We often don't like truth-telling. It challenges the optimistic view we'd rather hold. Not only an optimistic view of the world and our power to change it, but the optimistic view we prefer to hold of ourselves and our own goodness. If we get into serious truth-telling, we have to confront parts of ourselves and our communities that we don't like. When we look honestly at the way things are, we may not feel optimistic, but we can still have hope. And the hope comes when we go a step beyond seeing things the way they are and begin to imagine how they could be. I'm aware right now of so many places where people are trying to remain hopeful, even though they don't feel optimistic. The one weighing most powerfully on my heart right now is the war in Ukraine. The courage and the suffering of the people there, the irrational power mongering of Vladimir Putin. The possibility for any kind of positive outcome feels so bleak, and I got tears in my eyes as I sang with Avi, "A time for peace, I swear it's not too late." But then I read the stories about all the examples of human kindness that are growing out of this crisis, and they're countless. the help for refugees, the solidarity of the people, the way that people are pitching in and offering support and joining together. And I dare to hope that something better is possible. Closer to home, I could point to the continuing political divide in our own country, the uncertainties of the continuing pandemic, the continuing fight for racial justice. And of course, on top of all of that, we each have our own personal struggles in our relationships, our jobs, our communities. And for many of us, our own troubles, combined with the weight of what's going on around the world, have us feeling very heavy-hearted indeed. It's hard to hold a vision of a better world and to hope that we could create that world when we have trouble dragging ourselves out of bed in the morning. So I want to circle back to those divine resources. And I had to laugh when I realized that the words I had quoted in this sermon when I wrote it a year ago are the same words that I used for our reading when I was with you last month, from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, who is a theologian and scholar and the past president of the Starr King School for the Ministry. Dr. Parker wrote, "Even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is still a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. This is the ground of our hope." I can't stop coming back to that reading from Dr. Parker, even though, as I acknowledged last month, I'm not sure I believe it. My heart cries out yes as I read her words. And at the exact same time, I think to myself, I'm not sure I believe that's true. Is there really a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will? What does that even mean? This happens to me a lot on the spiritual journey. I come across something that speaks to my heart, and my rational mind doesn't want to accept it. So I was glad to find then this quotation from Galen Gingrich, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister, who wrote, "Faith is a commitment to live as if certain things are true, and thereby help to make them so. Faith is a commitment to live as if life is a wonderful mystery, as if life is good, as if love is divine, as if we are responsible for the well-being of those around us." I'm not always sure that there's a universal love that will never break faith with us. But I know that when I live as if that is true, I am more hopeful. And I'm convinced that there is something stronger than my own, sometimes feeble, human strength and determination. And again, this picks up on the themes I was talking about last month and when I preached on joining forces and how if we can harness our little bit of hope and faith and belief with the hope and faith and belief of others, we can make it so much stronger. I genuinely trust that there is a source of strength and hope that is beyond me. And I can choose to call that a divine resource. It may not transcend human nature or exist outside of it. Maybe it's just born of the deep connections among human beings, but it's a lot bigger than my own individual struggle. A year ago, when I was first working on this sermon, my sister happened to send me a video. It was a video of a group of nuns in an enclosed monastery in Dublin who took part in the Jerusalem viral dance challenge. Have any of you heard about it? It was really big about a year ago, this Jerusalem dance challenge. Are any of you familiar with it? Oh, you have got to Google this video. In fact, I thought really seriously about seeing if I could screen share and play it for you, but I wasn't sure if there might be copyright issues involved, so I didn't pursue that. But I was sure that some of you would have heard it. People all over the world were making videos of themselves dancing to this fabulous South African song called Jerusalem and posting the videos online. It started in Africa, but it quickly spread all over the world. And once I discovered that this was a thing, I did a YouTube search and started looking, and I found countless videos. Irish policemen, the staff of Austrian Airlines, women in saris on a rooftop in India, pediatric oncology medical personnel in Sweden, everybody got into recording themselves in groups of people dancing this particular dance to this incredible contemporary South African song, just to lift people's spirits during the pandemic. It was this pandemic thing. But I knew nothing about any of that when I first watched the video of these nuns dancing to Jerusalem. The nuns are part of the Redemptorist order. And there they were, these heavy-set, mostly older, middle-aged women, wearing shapeless red habits with white socks and sensible black shoes sticking out at the bottom. And they are dancing with their whole hearts and their whole bodies to this exuberant, uplifting South African music. Apparently, the sisters responded to a dare from their fellow Redemptorist fathers and brothers in the same order, who we also see dancing in the same video. The commentary that I read about the video said that the sisters usually live a quiet existence in their Dublin monastery and devote their lives to prayer. One of them, in talking about this video, which had gone viral, said it's not just a gimmick. Talking about them choosing to do this dance, it was purposefully done as a prayer. The nuns hoped their dancing would cheer people up in lockdown. It didn't just cheer me up. It made my heart sing. It gave me hope. I could feel that universal love that Rebecca Parker writes about, that love I'm not sure I believe in. I could feel it flowing through those nuns and into my heart as they danced their prayer for the world. And I realized that it doesn't matter whether I believe in it or not. The only thing that matters is that I allow myself to experience it when I encounter it. So I go back to the words of our reading from Teresa Soto. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star, and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. During these times of uncertainty, when our optimism may falter, may we hold hope close. May we trust those divine and human resources and hold on to the things that open our hearts and keep us going. Whether it's our family and friends, or the cat that, well, mine was scratching at my study door, desperate to get in a moment ago, but she likes to walk behind me as I preach, so I have to keep her out until the sermon is over. But the cat curled up purring next to you on the couch, or the dog that greets you at the door every time you come home. Whether it's your vision of a better future or a group of dancing nuns, hold on to whatever it is that helps you believe in a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. May we return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. May it be so.
Thank you, Libby. Hope is always much better than despair. And now is a time in our service when we recognize and lift up one another in love. Let us be fully present and listen with open hearts. If you wish to share something, click on reactions, for most of you at the bottom of the screen, and then click raise your hand, and we will help you to unmute. And for everyone's benefit, please be brief. If you have trouble trying to find that, you can always raise your hand physically, and we'll find you at that point.
I don't see anybody.
Well, it looks like,
Oh, Mary Jane.
oh, Mary Jane,
Hang on.
hold on.
Long.
There you go.
Am I here?
Yes.
Okay, every Sunday, I look forward to this time. And I'm so happy to be here with Libby talking and giving us inspiration, which she always does. Thank you, Libby.
Karen.
Karen.
I just wanted to say I had joy and a sorrow. The joy was spending time in celebration of Terry Christenberry and Nancy Harvin's recent retirements this weekend. It was great to be away with the girls. The sorrow is the 3 extra pounds that it got me from my weight loss journey. But the opportunity is I get to lose those pounds again. So it was great to be with them, and congratulations to those 2 wonderful ladies.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Roseanne.
Oh, yes, Roseanne. Can you?
There, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to have prayers for my brother who has COPD, and he had an episode where it got worse, and so he's on medicine. Gary and I were supposed to leave today to go down to their house and visit with them. We were taking the trip. We're still taking the trip, but now we're leaving Tuesday. But his name is Dave Deal, so I would like prayers that he's, will be on the mend and everything will go all right.
Thank you, Roseanne. All right. Well, whether or not you share today, for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. And for any sorrows or concerns, may you feel our sympathy and compassion. Let's pause for just a moment of gratitude, silent meditation, and prayer. And now, let's listen to Avi perform the closing song.
Please join me in our closing hymn, wherever you are, even as we stay muted on Zoom, with singing number 168, One More Step. One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song. One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step.
Bobby. And now, as I extinguish the chalice, please recite the words with me. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. Carry that flame with you as you leave this cyberspace and share it with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have yet to meet. Our service is concluded, but please stay for a few minutes of conversation and discussion. You can unmute yourself and use the chat function now. And to see everyone's faces, please put your Zoom into gallery view.